This podcast is brought to you by the Maryland State Library Agency. The MSLA podcast features presenters from statewide youth programs, as well as learning opportunities for library staff and resources for patrons of the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled's LBPD podcast, LBPD Guest Hour. I'm so excited today because we are going to be talking about a very important topic, and we have the Executive Director of the Maryland Commission of Civil Rights with us, Clevland Horton. Clevland brings a wealth of experience and steadfast commitment to protecting civil rights. He worked with the Maryland Commission of Civil Rights for more than 15 years, including serving as Deputy Director for 11 years. He's an employment law compliance and equal employment opportunity regulations expert with extensive knowledge regarding historical impact of state policies and procedures on all communities. He has an associate's degree from Community College of Baltimore County and a bachelor's degree and an MBA from the University of Baltimore. He is a member of the Coalition Opposed to Violence and Extremism and serves on the Maryland Advisory Council for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing and is committed to serving and protecting all rights for Marylanders. Does that sound about right for you, Mr. Horton?
That's what they say. So it sounds about right. Good morning. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited that you're here. You know, civil rights is a very important topic and it doesn't get discussed enough. We're talking about human rights today, and especially for those people with disabilities. It's very important that we have an expert come in and talk. So I am so happy that you're here.
Oh, it is our pleasure to be here. So, one of the things that we want to ensure that everyone is aware of our agency and the services that we can provide. We know that in today's climate, we do want to make sure that everyone's rights are protected. So it is truly our pleasure and our honor to be here this morning.
Well, at the end of the podcast, what I'll do is make sure that we get the phone number out there.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, I've got a couple of questions for you, and I'm going to pop right on in and get started, okay?
No problem.
What is the significance of Human Rights Month in advocating for the rights of people with disabilities?
Great way to start the questions off, right?
I got to give you a hardball first. I'm not a reporter, but I try.
It's all good. I think when we think about Human Rights Month, it truly serves as a powerful reminder that the dignity and the rights of all people, including those with disabilities, are essential as we think about trying to create and sustain a just and inclusive society. I think Human Rights Month gives us the opportunity to amplify our commitment to accessibility, equity, and justice. It also allows us to reaffirm that people with disabilities have the right to participate fully in every aspect of life, just like everyone else. I also think it is a time for action, awareness, and building a stronger, more inclusive community. Here in Maryland, the vision and the mantra of the Moore-Miller administration is to ensure that no one is left behind. And truly to be able to do that, we must ensure that everyone is included, including those with disabilities.
I didn't know that was the mantra of the Moore administration.
Yep. It's kind of been a platform that he ran on through his campaign, and has truly been his vision, and is embedded in every one of their priorities in their administration. Really is to ensure that everyone is included and that no one is left behind. And we here at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, we fully support that.
How can awareness of disability rights be effectively raised during Human Rights Month?
I think that, when you think about awareness, raising awareness during Human Rights Month, you really can. It starts with kind of education and storytelling. By sharing the lived experiences of people with disabilities, we can foster empathy and understanding, right? So I think when we think about any community, it's important for individuals who are not part of that community to truly understand those lived experiences. So it is important for us to listen and be educated by those who have those lived experiences. I think hosting community events, workshops, and public forums also allow people to learn about disability rights and access resources for those within that community. I mean, it could be a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a child, a grandmother, or a grandfather who has a disability. But what we do find is that there are so many people who don't understand or aren't aware of the resources that are currently available to those within that community. And I think, Human Rights Month is a perfect opportunity to showcase those resources and make folks aware of those resources. I think additionally, promoting stories of resilience and advocacy through social media, articles, and community partnerships can inspire others to kind of join the movement for disability justice. I think when we think about how do we ensure that folks with disabilities' rights are protected, it shouldn't just be those who have disabilities fighting for their rights. Right? We should all make sure that we're doing our part to ensure that everyone's rights are protected, including those with disabilities.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more. What popped into my head while you were thinking was like, I've been doing this 7 years, not the podcast. The podcast is about 3 years old, but but I've been the marketing and outreach librarian for over 7 years, and it always surprises me when I connect with people how many resources are out there that people just don't know about.
Yep.
It's always like a knife in my heart when someone goes, "Where? How long have you existed? This is amazing." And I'm like, 55 years. And they're like,
but we get we get the same exact thing, right? We have been in existence since 1927. Our name, so we are approaching kind of like that 100-year mark. Our name has changed over the years, and our level of authority has also changed. But us in its from a visionary standpoint, we've been in existence since 1927, and we still run across people that are like, "Who are you? What do you do? Never heard of," right? So it kind of hits us in the heart the same way. So I truly understand.
all right. What legal frameworks exist for internationally to protect the rights of people with disabilities?
I would think the first thing that I would think when I think about kind of internationally what protections are out there for folks with disabilities is really thinking about the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, right? Affectionately known as kind of like CRPD. It really is a groundbreaking international treaty that works hard to promote, protect, and ensure the rights of individuals with disabilities worldwide. The CRPD does affirm that individuals with disabilities have the right to equal treatment, freedom, and inclusion, kind of very similar to all of our local and state laws and federal laws in reference to folks with disabilities. Many nations have adopted legislation in line with the CRPD, demonstrating a growing commitment globally to ensure that people with disabilities enjoy the same opportunities and protections as everyone else. And I think that's the key when we think about when we think about communities and we talk about disability protections, there is still a large segment of the population that believes that these disability protections somehow give folks with disabilities preference or preferential treatment. And I think the education is important for folks to understand that we're not talking about preferential treatment here. We are talking about providing and protecting disability rights to ensure that they get equal treatment, which is completely different than some of the misnomers around folks feeling like disability protections or rights somehow give folks with disabilities preferential treatment.
I'm amazed that with that line of thinking.
Yep, we are too.
um, in what ways can governments improve accessibility for people with disabilities in public spaces?
I think that governments can really lead the way in accessible infrastructure, right, including transportation, buildings, and public services. It's one thing to talk about the resources, but folks having access to those resources is equally important, right? Whether it's a public building, public transportation, what avenues and resources are there for folks with disabilities. And I think when we think about transportation or buildings, right, you're probably mainly talking about those with physical disabilities to make sure that those facilities and those services are accessible to those with disabilities, right? And I think that, this means creating inclusive design standards, ensuring that the public spaces are wheelchair accessible, and providing assistive technologies such as audio guides or braille signage, right? I'm amazed because I'm in this line of work. I find myself oftentimes as an able-bodied person, when I hop on elevators a lot, looking for, wow, what happened if I did have a disability, if I had a visual impairment, how would I be able to push the buttons? Is there something that indicates to me what floor I'm on? How would I know? So, and it's almost second nature to me now because I'm just so used to protecting the rights of everyone that, in certain spaces, I just happen to observe like, hey, well, if I was a disabled person, how would I navigate in this space? So it is important from a government standpoint that we are ensuring that we are making our resources, our buildings, our services are accessible to those with disabilities. And I think, more importantly, I think a lot of times we kind of sit in our offices and try to figure out or think that we know what people need and want. But for me, I think it's more important for us really to kind of listen to the voices of people with disabilities as we're planning and making these decisions. I think it really leads to more practical and effective solutions. Able-bodied persons sitting in the conference room trying to say, okay, well, this is what they need, versus taking the time out to have community forums, inviting folks with disabilities out to talk to you, to listen to what they have to say in reference to what their needs are is completely more valuable than just trying to guess what they need. So I think the listening piece is equally, if not more important, as any of the technologies or resources from an accessibility standpoint.
You are right on the nose. It's always interesting to hear the stories of how something that I didn't think of being inaccessible caused somebody else stress,
Yep.
and that's like the last thing I want to do.
Yep.
How does the fight for disability rights intersect with other human rights issues such as gender and racial equality?
I think, just listening to the question, right? For me, I think that sometimes we tend to parse out whether it's women's rights, disability rights, LGBTQ rights. And truthfully, for us, disability rights are human rights, right? But a lot of times when we are discussing certain issues, we tend to make the separation somehow, right? But I think that when we really think about it, for me and for our agency, human rights encompass all of these things, especially disability rights. And I think that the pursuit of these rights intersects deeply with other social justice movements. Many individuals with disabilities also experience discrimination based off of race or gender or sexual orientation or economic status, right? Creating like these layers of inequalities. So I think addressing disability rights through an intersectional lens allow us to kind of tackle these interconnected issues more effectively, right? Ensuring that all people, regardless of identity, can access and enjoy their full rights. Because you can be discriminated because you're a Black person with a disability. You can be discriminated because you're a white person with a disability, right? So I think when we think about disability rights, it intersects with all of the protected classes, because it doesn't mean that just because you're Black, you can't have a disability, or just because you're male, you can't have a disability. So I think that disability is one of those protected classes that intersects with all of the other protected classes, which can deepen when we think about the historical and systemic inequalities in our country, in our states, and in our communities. Having a disability can exacerbate some of those other inequalities, right? Because if you're a member of a marginalized community, right, and you also have a disability, folks can feel like, oh, now I have double trouble, right? I have double the issues, and thinking about that. So I think that, again, disability rights intersects with most, if not all, of the other protected classes.
How can an inclusive education system better support students with disabilities?
I think that an inclusive education system starts with the belief that every child deserves the opportunity to learn in a supportive environment, right? I think that, studies show that children who are in supportive environments perform better. Schools can better support students with disabilities by offering individualized learning plans, providing accessible materials, and training teachers on inclusive practices. And I really think that the key to that is just like us as adults, right? There are no two adults that are alike. There are no two children that are alike. So I think it is very important for those who have disabilities and within the school system, as we talked about these individualized learning plans, to kind of figure out what is most effective for that student, right? And not just figure, okay, well, these two students have the same disability, then they should be taught and they are going to learn the same way. We really need to make sure that we are being individualized as we are addressing students with disabilities. I think that when we foster a culture of inclusion in our education systems, we not only help students with disabilities reach their full potential, but we also build a more compassionate, accepting future generation moving forward.
Very true. Very true. Starts from the ground up.
Definitely.
Starts from the ground up. What role does technology play in advancing the rights of people with disabilities?
when you think about technology, I think technology for everybody is a game changer, right? And those with disabilities are no different. I think that technology can be a game changer for people with disabilities, because it opens doors to communication, independence, and opportunity. I think one of the things that you'll hear from folks with disabilities is that people treat them as if they are dependent upon everyone else and they want to live full, independent lives. And I think that technology and the advancement of technology gives them now more than ever the opportunity to do so. I think that assistive technologies like screen readers, voice recognition software, and mobility aids have empowered individuals to participate fully when we think about work, education, or community life, right? How do we communicate with each other? And technology is really changing how we are able to communicate with each other, especially for those with disabilities. As technology continues to advance, I think it's crucial that innovation focuses on accessibility and affordability, right? I just remember when you think about cell phones, right? I remember cell phones used to cost maybe about $200, at the most $300. Now you're looking at these new cell phones coming out with all of this new innovative technology that are about $1,200, right? And that's difficult for anybody, whether you have a disability or not, when you talk about the affordability of it. So I think as technology advances, especially for those with disability, it is going to be important on an important issue of it is the affordability, right? Not just can folks have access to it, but can folks afford that particular technology? So I think we want to make sure that folks with disabilities have the opportunity to benefit from all of the advancements in technology.
Very true. Very true. That's one of the things I love about the library is that we loan out Braille readers.
Mm.
They're made by Humanware, and it's a refreshable Braille display
Mm.
made for reading books. So,
Okay.
and that's like $500 to
Yeah.
$1,000 right there, and
Yeah.
that's expensive.
Yeah. And it can be difficult, right? Because I think when you think about at times individuals with disabilities, they find it hard to find work at times, which can impact their level of affordability. So we do want to make sure, one, as we address the disability issues in employment, that we're also being mindful as we continue to look at these advancements in technology, that folks who have disabilities are having access, like you all are providing access to different levels of technology for folks for free or definitely at a more affordable price so that they can utilize those services. I think it impacts everything that they do, right? How they communicate with other folks, how they're able to perform their work, what businesses they are able to access. It just impacts their everyday life.
Oh yeah, yeah. We like to give everything we can away for free. So
That's
we're a
good.
library. that's that's like the thing I stamp on every email I send out. We are free. I promise. That's the I'll go to an event and someone will say, "Well, how much is this going to cost?" And I'm like, "We're a library."
And
um
it's good, and it's important for the library to be supported, to be able to continue to provide this free technology, these free services, because it is truly valuable for the communities that you all serve.
it is. It really is. All right. Well, I'm down to my last question. What can communities do to ensure full social inclusion for people with disabilities beyond?
Great ending question too, right? You started off with a bang, you end with a bang. I think that, lasting change truly does require a year-round commitment, right? So, communities can work towards social inclusion by really fostering environments that welcome people with disabilities, creating accessible public spaces, as we talked about, promoting inclusive events, and encouraging volunteerism to support disability rights initiatives. And it can't just be during Human Rights Month, right? It has to be a year-round effort. Additionally, I think building partnerships with disability rights organizations ensures that communities stay informed and proactive in promoting accessibility and equality every day of the year. I think by advancing these efforts, we are building a society where all individuals, including those with disabilities, have an opportunity to thrive. But it shouldn't be just during Human Rights Month. We should be taking a look at these issues daily as we go about, especially for those organizations who are charged with protecting the rights of those who have disabilities, like the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. I think it's important for us as we move forward as an agency to ensure that we are looking at these issues on a daily basis and connecting with other organizations to ensure that we are advancing the rights of those with disabilities and ensuring that their current rights are always being protected.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I wanted to say that people can get in touch with the Commission on Civil Rights if they have questions about what you all do and how to move forward if there's an issue. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you like, I can definitely give you that information. Our main contact number is 410-767-8600. There is a load of information on our website, and we are updating our website regularly. We love for folks to take a look at our website, and if there's information that folks feel like we should have included in our website that we currently don't, we are also open to that. Our website is mccr.maryland.gov, and that's Maryland spelled out. And again, we are open to any feedback in reference to information that will be helpful to the public that's not on our website. And if it's something that we absolutely can get up on our website, we absolutely will.
Yeah, I've been through your website and it is a load of information. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I
Uh,
also think it's important to know, I think, which kind of similar to the library, we do a lot of education and outreach in a number of different communities, and we do it all for free, right?
mhm.
So we do welcome the opportunity to come out to any communities, organizations, to educate them, whether it's disability discrimination, employment discrimination, housing discrimination. We have a very robust education and outreach department led by our director of education and outreach, Candace Gray. And she is always open to, suggestions and feedback or requests to come out and to talk about the areas of authority that we have and how we can be a better service to community. So folks can definitely feel free to also reach out to Candace. And I know Candace, her email is Candace, that's CANDICE .gray, GRAY at maryland.gov.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being with us today and for Candace for going through and making sure that things were simpatico because I know how busy you are. If you wouldn't mind just hanging on one quick second while I say goodbye and then we'll wrap up.
No problem at all.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this was another LBPD podcast of LBPD Guest Hour. And again, we talked about Human Rights Month and we had the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights here. And I'm so grateful. Again, we'll see you next month.
This has been a presentation of the Maryland State Library Agency. For links to additional resources provided by today's presenter, please visit the show notes. For more information on MSLA or the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled, visit marylandlibraries.org.